4. Then we come on to delta. What is a danger area? An airspace which is of certain defined dimension, and in this, some dangerous activities are taking part, which they might be hazardous to the safety of the aircraft at some certified times. Dangerous goods which are basically a risk to health, the safety or property or environment. Then is Data Link Automatic Terminal Information Service, DATIS. It is the provision of an automatic terminal information service via some data link. Then dead reckoning navigation. The estimating or determining of the position by advance and earlier known position by the application of using the time, the position, the speed or directions. Then is decision altitude or decision height, a particular specified altitude or height at which a missed approach it can be initiated if the required visual reference to continue the approach has not been established. If there is some low visibility or the runway visual range it is not above the limits, then at this particular decision height or decision altitude we have to initiate a missed approach. Remember that the decision altitude is always referenced from the mean sea level and decision height from the ground level. Declared distances very important. Tora, takeoff run available, it is the length of the runway which is available and is suitable for the ground run of an aircraft taking off. Takeoff distance available, the length of the takeoff run available plus the length of the clear way. Accelerate stop distance available, we've already discussed. Landing distance available is the length of the runway which is suitable or available for the ground run of the aircraft, which is landing. Then destination alternate, if at a particular destination I'm not able to land, then I'll have to divert to some alternate. Then is detresfa. Detresfa is for distress phase. We'll discuss the distress phase later on. Then is displaced threshold, a threshold which is not at the end of the runway or the extremity of the runway due to some purpose like for construction purposes or when it is damaged or whatever the condition may be, so it is known as a displaced threshold. Now comes the distress phase. It is the situation where there is a reasonable certainty that an aircraft and its occupants or the passengers they are threatened by grave and imminent danger and they also require immediate assistance. Then is ditching, it is forced landing of an aircraft on water. Then comes we need to do elevation. Elevation, it is the vertical distance of a point or a level or an affix to the surface of the earth which is measured from mean sea level. Emergency phase, it is the uncertainty phase or the alert phase or distress phase. We'll discuss about the uncertainty phase once it comes. Then estimated off block time, chalks off. So whenever the aircraft is parked, so that under the influence of strong winds, it do not move from its positions, chalks are applied at the wheels. So it is the estimated time at which the aircraft will commence the movement associated with departure. Chalks off. Estimated time of arrival. So we know there are two type of flight rules, the instrument flight rules and the visual flight rules. For the in IFA flights, when the flight it will arrive over some designated point or navigational facility, that is the estimated time of arrival. And in case of visual flight rules VFR, the time when it will arrive overhead the aerodrome is the estimated time of arrival. Estimated approach time. Okay, sometimes what happens due to some traffic congestion or weather activity, the aerodrome is not available for landing. So, in such cases, the ATC asks the aircraft the pilot to hold in a fix. So when it is holding in a fix, so after some time it will definitely come down when it gets the approach clearance. So at what estimated time the aircraft is going to leave the hold, it is communicated to the pilot, so it is the estimated approach time. Then is filed flight plan. Before every scheduled flight or some non-scheduled flight, a flight plan has to be filed for safety purposes and for the purpose that the ATC is told about the flight. So it is required. The next is flight level. Flight level is basically referenced from a specific pressure datum, that is 1013.25 hectopascals. When set to QNH, QNH is basically the mean sea level pressure. From mean sea level we obviously note our altitude, so it will indicate the altitude. And when QFE is the uh, station level pressure, so it will give us the height as it is above the ground level. Then is flight manual. It is associated with certificate of airworthiness, which contains some of the limitations for the aircraft to be considered airworthy. Flight operations officer or flight dispatcher, it is a person who is designated by the operator who engages in the supervision of the flight operations to control and supervise the flight operations. Flight plan we've already discussed. Flight recorder, okay, any type of recorder which is installed in the aircraft, so that in case of some accident or incident investigation, the conversations through these recorders can be complemented. It is also sometimes in some crime scenes of aircraft, the accident of aircraft, people usually search for a black box because it has all the recordings of the flight. So it is a black box is a flight recorder. Then flight time. Okay, before that, you need to know that the flight data recorder (FDRs) they record the data of last 25 hours, and the CVR, the cockpit voice recorders, it records the data for at least 30 minutes. Earlier, it was 3 hours, but now develop after some developments, the CVR also records the data for 25 hours now. Flight time, it is when the aeroplane it first moves under its own power for the purpose of taking off until it finally comes to rest at the end of the flight. It is chalks off to chalks on. Then forecast, it is the expected meteorological conditions for a specific period of time or area. Foreign object debris. Okay, anything on the air port's runway or the taxiway or the place from where the aircraft is moving on, all it also includes the apron, anything which is hazardous for the aircraft, and it will definitely hinder the safety of the aircraft and the ground movement of the aircraft, that is considered as foreign object debris. Then come to golf, general aviation operation, commercial air transport operations. Then come to glider, it is non-power driven, heavier than air aircraft. Then come to hotel, hazard beacon, which provides danger or which is dangerous for air navigation. Heading, the direction where the nose of the aircraft is pointing in a longitudinal axis, and it is usually expressed from either the true north, the magnetic north, or compass or grid north. Then height, it is from a specific datum, usually above the ground level. Then is holding procedure. It is predetermined, first of all, we need to know. So it is a predetermined maneuver which will keep the aircraft within a certain airspace until the approach clearance is received. So there are two types of holding procedures: right hand standard holding position and left hand standard holding procedure. We need to know that Delhi has approximately 5 to 6 VORs, very high frequency omnidirectional, okay, for holding. Then we come on to the next page. IMC, it is the instrument meteorological conditions, some of the meteorological conditions which need to be followed in case we are flying instrument on instruments, and there is no VMC condition. It is in terms of visibility, the runway visual range or the ceiling, etc. Then is instrument runway, when there is some navigational aid helping in terms of landing, we can say. Just go through these 4 points. Not of much significance for air regulations, but definitely for navigation. Then come on to Lima. Landing direction indicator, it is basically in the shape of a T. It will indicate the currently designated runway or the direction which is used for takeoff or landing. And the landing distance available, we've already discussed. Come on to mic maneuvering area, we need to know it is very important and it will definitely come in the questions also. So it is a part of the aerodrome that is used for takeoff, landing, and taxiing of aircraft. Basically, it excludes the apron from runway and taxiway. So runway and taxiway is maneuvering area, and one comes the movement area. It is runway, taxiway, and the apron. Then is marker. It is basically an object which is on the ground, above the ground level, and it indicates some obstacle, or it delineates or surrounds a boundary. Then is master's minimum equipment list, MMEL. It is given by the designer or the manufacturer but is approved by the DGCA. So it has some of the aircraft instruments or the items which, when are not operatable or not working, the aircraft can still be used. From the MMEL, the operators, they take out some certain items that, okay, if I'm not having these two, then I can fly if it is in MMEL, but the operator will list it to even one or zero or so. So MEL, Master's Minimum Equipment List, that is MMEL, and MEL is minimum equipment list. MEL is given by the operator and again it is approved by DGCA. So it is limiting the aircraft operation now to a certain more extent. Minimum decision altitude or MDH. Decision altitude, remember, is for precision approach, and minimum decision altitude for non precision approach. It is the specified altitude or height below which the descent must not be initiated until we have some visual reference. Then is the next is minimum equipment list. I've also explained it earlier. Then minimum obstacle clearance altitude. So for a certain defined segment of flight, it will provide obstacle clearance. Then is and also remember the navigational coverage of MOCA, it is 22 nautical miles. Minimum sector altitude, the lowest altitude which can be used, that provides us 1,000 feet obstacle clearance in the area within a sector of 25 nautical miles. Remember, so Delhi Airport 2 VORs it is having, and the minimum sector altitude in the charts we can see it. So the minimum sector altitude of Delhi is 2600 feet, and this 25 nautical miles, it is from the aerodrome reference point or the aerodrome, we can say